Mary Bostwick Shellman was born on July 1st, 1849 in Westminster, Maryland, the third of 4 children. Her father, Colonel James Meriwether Shellman, passed away 2 years later. Raised by her mother, Catherine, Mary grew up in a home filled with learning and artistic expression, a spirit she would carry throughout her life. Catherine moved her family of teenagers and young adults to a home now known as the Sherman Fisher Shellman House in 1864. As a teenager during the Civil War, Mary lived in a deeply divided Maryland. She watched as her home was briefly occupied by Confederate troops in July 1864, and recalls the divide among children in the town, with some booing and others cheering the occupying soldiers. When Jeb Stuart noticed she was not among those cheering, Mary recalls, he brought her on his horse, called her his little captive, and gave her a kiss. Mary would not remain a child for long during this war. She tended to wounded soldiers and wrote letters on their behalf, witnessing firsthand the cost of battle. That early care and compassion would define her life's mission, service. At just 18 years old, Mary took it upon herself to create a lasting tribute to those who had fought and fallen. On May 30th, 1868, she organized Westminster's first Decoration Day parade, leading rows of schoolchildren dressed in white in placing flowers on Civil War soldiers' graves. This Decoration Day parade would become the Memorial Day parade we now know, and Westminster boasts one of the oldest parades in the nation. But Mary was also clear in her beliefs. While the dead should be mourned, the Confederate cause should not be honored. In her poetry and writing, she argued that Americans could unite in mourning, but should never forget that treason and slavery had no place in the country's future. Her dedication to veterans extended far beyond Decoration Day. She was elected an honorary comrade of Wilson Post No. 1 of the Grand Army of the Republic, as well as the Burns Post No. 13 and the Old Six, Massachusetts, among others, one of the few women to receive such an honor. She spent decades working for Union veterans, embodying the very values of duty and remembrance. Mary's drive and independence broke many barriers for women. Though denied the right to vote for most of her life, she refused to be sidelined. She was an influential political writer, penning campaign songs and newspaper articles, rallying support for causes she believed in. In 1913, she was elected the first president of the Just Government League of Carroll County, advocating for women's suffrage. And when the 19th Amendment was finally ratified in 1920, granting women the right to vote, Mary didn't just celebrate, she acted. She opened her home to teach newly enfranchised women how to vote, ensuring they had the knowledge and confidence to exercise their rights. Yet, like many suffragists of her time, Mary's activism primarily centered on white women. She lived in a world where racial hierarchies persisted, and she did not advocate for black suffrage with the same fervor. Mary had positive relationships with the black women in her community. Paul Rees wrote that Rachel Pye, the servant of a nearby family, was the lifelong devoted friend of MBS. Her relationships with black women, particularly Mary Key, a formerly enslaved woman who remained in the household and whom Mary Shellman and Paul Rees called Mammy, reflect the complexities of race in post-Civil War Maryland. More than anything, Mary Shellman dedicated her life to public service. She worked tirelessly to improve conditions at the county almshouse, transforming it from a place of neglect into a model institution. She played a crucial role in bringing the first telephone system to Carroll County in 1884, even serving as Westminster's first telephone operator and manager. Mary helped organize Boy Scout troop, something she considered among her life's greatest work. She penned a poem in her town newspaper, urging the town to form a Boy Scout troop. And when no one stepped up, she did it herself, despite being a woman. Her deception was revealed one day when the Scoutmaster signed the check with Miss Shellman instead of N.B. Shellman. And she wrote to the local Scout Council, Isn't it an awful thing to be a woman? I can't vote because I'm still classed with idiots, criminals, and insane. But be honest, gentlemen, that after fooling a lot of wise men a whole year into thinking I was a man, I am capable of handling the vote when I get it. In 1889, Mary Shellman volunteered with the Red Cross and responded to one of America's greatest disasters, the Johnstown flood, where she aided victims alongside Clara Barton, receiving a pin from Barton herself. Her passion for education, literature, and history enriched her community. She edited a newspaper, staged local performances, and helped establish one of Westminster's first public libraries. Mary's later years saw her moving to West Virginia in 1921, and eventually to Oklahoma and Texas, where she lived with family but continued to write and correspond with friends back home. Though distance separated her from Westminster, her influence remained woven into the fabric of the town. Through her actions, Mary Shellman proved that one person's dedication can ripple outward, leaving a lasting impact on community, state, and nation. She was a woman who refused to accept limitations, whether in her work for veterans, in the fight for women's rights, or in her belief that service was the true measure of a citizen.
Welcome. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Historical Society of Carroll County, welcome. We're so happy that you're here. We have an extraordinary afternoon planned for you. Today's event is a culmination of almost a year's worth of planning, and it coincides with the opening of the Historical Society's eagerly awaited exhibit, Mary Shellman, Civil War to Suffrage, which officially opens to the public Monday at the Sherman Fisher Shellman House, just several blocks away from here. We are especially indebted to the following organizations and individuals for their support of this event and the Historical Society's mission: the Maryland State Arts Council, the League of Women Voters of Carroll County, and Cheryl Steinbacher. Hey Westminster, the Carroll Arts Center. Can we have a warm round of applause for the Arts Center? Our county commissioners for their support of the Historical Society in this event, Jacqueline Slade, and of course, Darcy Tucker. Another special person guiding us along on this journey is the incredible Sarah Coster. Sarah has served as our lead project consultant for not only this event, but also the new exhibit. It is my great honor to now introduce Sarah to you, who will help us set the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And I especially want to thank the team at the Historical Society of Carroll County, Stephanie Eckerd and Laura Bankard. Without you, we could not have been here today. Laura was at the helm of today's performance, and both ladies have been truly amazing. And Jason, thank you for all your support. This has been a wonderful project to work on. I've been honored. Again, it has been my absolute honor to, over the past year, get to know the singular historical figure that is Mary Bostwick Shellman. In learning about her life and getting to know her contributions to her community, state, and nation, I joined the many volunteers, researchers, board members, and Carroll County residents, many of you here today, who have long known what a treasure they had in her life's story. Indeed, it was the sale of Mary Shellman's house and the legacy of her life that was the impetus to begin the Historical Society of Carroll County. Learning about Mary has caused me to stop and reflect about my own life, and that is my hope for you today. For me personally, I think about Mary and I think about how I can never take the right to vote for granted, in particular being a woman. I think about how I get to every Thursday night lead a group of Cub Scouts. I think about the times that I am feeding the poor and all the volunteers in my community and this community who help the poor and who care for veterans. I think about my father-in-law driving blood up I-97 for the Red Cross, and I'm reminded of Mary's own work with that organization. And just as Mary knew, I think about how we all have a role to play in working for that more perfect union. Today we will be inviting Mary onto the stage, and we'll also be inviting community members from around the county and the state to read poetry and perform her music. We will be traveling back 100 years to 1925. Miss Mary Shellman will be using terminology from that time period, and you will hear words, in particular, Negro and slave. At that time, they were in common use, and they were meant to be descriptive, though we do not use them today. I'm very excited to see you get to know this wonderful, inspiring woman. Again, thank you to the organizations that have put this together, and I would encourage you to reflect on the organizations that Mary was involved in that are still around today and how you can continue her work in our community now. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Miss Mary Bostwick Shellman.
Thank you so much, Ms. Coster and Mr. Alari, and thank all of you for coming. I can't tell you how good it feels to be back on the stage here in Westminster. It's been many years. I had great fun, I remember, portraying Emma in William Tell. Maybe some of you saw that performance. I am a little abashed this afternoon because my mother taught me that a lady shouldn't toot her own horn. And yet that's exactly what this afternoon is. I am so flattered and amazed that you would come to hear me tell my memories of Westminster and of Carroll County, and to listen to the poetry and the music that I wrote, the songs that I wrote about it. So thank you very much for that. I thought it might be appropriate to start with one of those poems. The old, old pump with its moss-grown stump, its waters so pure and cold. How often I've drunk from its old tin cup in the dear good days of old. Its iron handle, which up and down drew the bucket from the well, as it rang a tune on the old pump's side, like the sound of a deep-toned bell. How often I've stood by its moss-grown stalk and drunk of its waters clear. 'Tis a memory now, for the old pump's gone, but a memory ever dear. Old landmark, you're gone. You had grown too old. Like us, you were past your prime. Your place was needed for modern things. You have passed with the march of time. Oh, the faces and voices of those who have gone, who have passed to the other shore. I can see and hear them all tonight, as I have never done before. Faces that shine with youth and joy. Faces from care grown old. One and all their thirst you've quenched with your waters pure and cold. Faces that lie neath the soft green sod, long since they have passed away. Their places are filled by a younger throng, as your place is filled today. Goodbye, old pump, or your resting place we erect for the public good, a fountain which stands in the self-same place the old town pump once stood. Thinking about that pump takes me back in time. It brings back such sweet memories for me. Memories of my youth here, of a time when Carroll County's roads were traversed by horses and mules rather than rattling automobiles, when most homes had only candles and oil lamps and not electric lights. Of a time when there were no telephones, when to speak to a friend you had either to write a letter or to walk a great distance. I remember the happy, lazy days of my youth when my sister Fanny and I would lie on the grass and look up at the clouds and see the shapes there. But Fanny's friends didn't like her little sister hanging about with them. She was 7 years older than I was. So being unwelcome with the older girls, I found my friends among the boys. My brother Jimmy became my best friend, and his pals became my pals, his interests, my interests. And that started a lifelong appreciation of boy friendships, an appreciation I still hold to this day. I remember the things we used to do, hunting and fishing and attending parades and church picnics. There was an amazing parade. It was when Lincoln was elected, and I don't now remember whether it was before or after the election, but my 11-year-old eyes were astonished to see barrels of flaming tar rolling down the street, and balls of twine that had been soaked in turpentine and set on fire being tossed back and forth from one person to another. How they protected their hands, I do not know, but believe it or not, that really happened. And I was so excited when Lincoln won the election. I was too young, of course, to understand the ramifications of that election. I didn't know what it meant that the South had said they would secede if he were chosen. But several years later, we found out exactly what it meant. The war came here to Carroll County. I remember several days before my 14th birthday, a group of Union soldiers from Delaware came into the city, and oh, how my heart leapt at the sight of those blue coats. They were here for a bit of rest and to reshoe their horses, and they didn't realize how close the Confederate troops were. And I can hear it so vividly, it's as though it happened yesterday, my young companions and I shouting, "The rebels are coming! The rebels are coming!" And Isaac Pearson, who later became my brother-in-law, ran to alert the sleeping infantry. And my brother and some other friends ran to alert the cavalry up on the hill. They dashed down to confront the Confederates, but they were woefully outnumbered. And after a few moments of sharp fighting, they were driven back, the horses thundering back up the main street as they retreated, and they firing as they went. It was all over in a matter of moments, but for those of us crouched behind our doors, not knowing how long it would last, it was terrifying. And when it was over, the Confederates all gathered at the city hotel, and a group of us young people gathered across the street. And I was the only Union shrieker among them, which made me a bit on the outs with the other young people. I remember my sister was so embarrassed by me, she was trying to grab my hand to hold it down as I was cheering the Union troops. But she didn't pull it down fast enough, obviously, because Jeb Stuart noticed my enthusiasm. He rode over and lifted me up onto the saddle, rode about town, called me his little captive, and kissed me on the cheek. And I was an object of envy to many of the Southern sympathizers, but I tell you, that was an honor I could well have lived without. And a year later, our home was occupied. Brigadier General Johnson came through town and occupied our home as his headquarters for an evening, only for an evening. But imagine the terror of having enemy troops knock on your door and demand your house and having no choice but to turn it over to them, not knowing what would happen to your home, your prized possessions, how long it would last. But when the war really hit home for me was the day after my infamous ride with Jeb Stuart. Union troops were making their way from Chancellorsville to Gettysburg, and that June was unbelievably hot. And it was so hot that the soldiers, many of them were passing out from the heat, just falling in their tracks. And they were being taken to the McAllen Hotel, which was serving as a hospital. And we women were asked to go and do what we could for them. And I sat by the bedside of a man from Maine, Private Robert Clark. He and his fellow soldiers had fought at Chancellorsville just before. They were exhausted before they even started the march. His fever was so high, he was delirious. And I sat helplessly next to his bedside, fanning him, mopping his brow with a wet cloth, doing anything I could to try to ease his discomfort. I remember he called out a name not long before he died, and I wrote that name down. And I sent it to Washington, D.C., to Maine's senator there, Senator Blaine, and he wrote back to inform me that Private Clark had left behind a young wife and a baby. And some years later, when the boy was a little older, that boy and I corresponded, and he sent me a photograph, which I treasure to this day. And every time I look at that photograph, I think of all of the children who lost brothers and fathers in that war. And I did what I have always done all my life. When I have grappled with something, I've usually grappled using my pen. And I wrote poetry about the Civil War, which Miss Iris Good will now read for you.
An unknown soldier's grave. Now this cruel war is over, and all fighting's at end. How many are watching vainly for the absent child or friend, who out upon the battlefield is sleeping 'neath the sod, evermore to watch beside him, unknown save to his God. No marble rests his marking place where sleeps that noble one, but a mother watches daily to greet her absent son. O mother, cease thy weeping, O sister, dry thy tears, and drop a flower or two on a comrade soldier's biers. For on the field of Shiloh, many, many months ago, a brave and manly boy fell fighting with the foe. The return of the Westminster boys. We are coming, back to our happy home. We are coming to our loved ones, never more to roam. For now this cruel war is o'er, and peace, sweet peace is here. We will hasten to our heavenly home and to our friends so dear. 4 years ago we left them to battle for the right, and we knew their prayers went with us from the camp into the fight. For they told us when we left them, they would pray that we'd be true to our country and our country's flag, the brave red, white, and blue. And now we're coming home again, from them no more to roam, for we've helped to drive the cruel war from our country and our home. And we now know that we are welcome, for we have proved that we are true, and that we love our country's flag, the brave red, white, and blue.
Thank you, Ms. Good. It was a beautiful thing to see those boys returning home. All of our Carroll County men and boys who had fought so valiantly. And we women had done what we could during the war, nursing the sick, as I said, knitting caps and socks and praying and waiting. But sitting by Private Clark's bedside made me realize for the first time that most of what we do, we all of us, when there are disasters at our doorstep, is to pray that God will send someone to help. Why is it that we so rarely ask to be the one sent? I realized when I was nursing Private Clark that had to be my life's work, to be the hands that people were praying for, to be the hands that would give the aid that was needed. And it wasn't very long after, I was only 18, when the Grand Army of the Republic, an organization which is devoted to seeing to the needs of veterans, Union veterans of the war, they put out a call for a decoration day. And I decided that I would rouse all of the children and get them to carry flowers in a parade to the cemetery where we would lay flowers on the graves of the Union dead. It started with the children and it continues to this day. And one would think that after all these years, perhaps the enthusiasm would wane, but it has not, because that cause was so just. I've been questioned from time to time about why I specifically say the Union dead. I think it's important to mourn all of those brave soldiers, whichever side they were on. To mourn them, yes, but we must always remember that some of them fought to maintain a cruel system of slavery, where others fought to break those chains and to save the Union. And with that in mind, I wrote Honor to Whom Honor is Due. And thinking of all of those dead, I wrote Sleep Sweetly, Dear Comrade. My sister Fanny wrote the music for it. And so the Peabody Ensemble will sing Sleep Sweetly, and Iris will return to read Honor to Whom Honor is Due.
Our hero commanded
and this is honor to whom honor is due. Why should we share the honor we offer our patriots brave with the traitors who fought against them in the land they died to save? Why should we share the honor we offer our boys in blue with the rebel who fought for treason and hated the loyal and true? We honor our patriot soldiers, and through them we honor the cause of equality, liberty, freedom, and constitutional law. As year after year our tribute of beautiful flowers we lay on the graves of fallen comrades on Decoration Day, we honor the cause they died for and our tribute of tears bestow, but we dare not divide the honor we offer them with the foe. We dare not divide the honors of Decoration Day. Our laurels are for blue coats, our tears alone for the gray. We cherish no anger toward them that ebbed away with their life. War's bitterness and hatred all ended with the strife. We honored their deeds of bravery, who their cause was under the van, for they thought as American soldiers and as only Americans can. But we hate the cause they fought for, and we vowed a solemn vow to crush the earth foul treason. Why should we honor it now? Down on the blue Potomac, the waters with blood ran red, and Shiloh's field of battle was strewn with our loyal dead. On mountainside, field and forest, where'er a battle was fought, their bones were left to wither, for freedom was dearly bought. Full many of home in the Northland was blighted for freedom's sake. Full many a heart was wounded, till sorrow made it break. But the chains of the slave were broken, never to be joined again, and the price we paid for freedom was 1,000,000 gallant slain. But our banner is proudly waning, once more on land and sea, and it floats over a ransomed people in the home of the brave and free. Then honor the Union soldier, let the honor be his alway. I'll give him the crown of the laurel, and only our tears to the glory.
Thank you again, Miss Good. Those gallant boys in blue fought not only to free the slaves, but very soon after, those same Negroes, the men anyway, were given the vote. One of those men I knew. I had known him the entire time I was growing up. He was a very old man by the time I was a child. Nicholas Parkway died at 110, but by then he had cast a vote. And I wrote this poem in honor of Nicholas Parkway. Toll the bell softly and toll the bell slow. The boat is crossing the silvery tide, and the old man's life is ebbing low. Soon he will land on the other side. Old Nick was a slave of African birth, born 110 years ago. He has passed the summer and autumn of life and is bending beneath the winter's snow. He was this last century ushered in with all its trials and struggles and woe. He saw our patriot fathers stand with bleeding feet in the blood-stained snow. He saw the struggle begin and end and heard the shout which the freedmen gave, but he knew not then of liberty, for poor old Nick was a Negro slave. But with the shout of the freemen came the iron clank of slavery's chain, and the dark-browed child of African birth toiled hard for freedom, but in vain. And Lincoln, so noble and grand and brave, dared the furious, angry blast, and stretching his hand in the darkness there, he broke the chains of the slave at last. And slavery's curse was all wiped out, and the black cloud changed to sunshine then. And oh, what a shout of gladness came from the lips of 1,000,000 free-made men. And the old man stood with bended head, and tears of joy rolled down his cheek as he breathed the prayer of gratitude his trembling lips refused to speak. Lord, let me live yet a little while and add to the blessings already sent the crowning joy the freedman craves, to cast my vote for president. And there at the ballot, with tearful eye and trembling hand, his vote was cast, and he breathed a prayer of thankfulness for joy that seemed too great to last. His prayer was granted, and happy and free, he cast his vote with a freedman's pride, and the lifeboat bearing his weary soul slowly crossed to the other side. It's strange to me now how I didn't question that a former slave could vote, but a woman couldn't. I was looking, of course, for ways to serve my country, but although there already were suffragists about, I was not one of their number. I found other ways to serve my country. I joined the Women's Relief Corps, the women's branch of the Grand Army of the Republic. And I devoted my life to the care of veterans. In point of fact, Private Clark and 4 other Union veterans lie in my plot at the city cemetery. And I am so honored to say that because of my work on behalf of veterans, several different chapters of the Grand Army of the Republic made me an honorary member, despite the fact that I'm a woman. After the Johnstown flood, I joined the Red Cross. I was given a pin by Clara Barton herself. I worked for the County Home for the Poor, a place which was once a blight on the fair soil of our county, but has been so redeemed now that it is held up as an example by our governor for what poor houses should be. I worked to get the telephone into Carroll County. Our home was one of the first, in fact, I think the first, private home in Carroll County to have a telephone, and I worked as a telephone operator and eventually as a manager. And when Alexander Graham Bell came here to Carroll County, he gave me a pin, gold and black. It's a pin in the shape of a telephone, and it's one of my prized possessions. And I looked about and thought, there's not much to do. If I were a boy in this town, I'd be bored. And everyone knows that even the best of boys, when they're bored, can get into trouble. So it occurred to me that we really needed to start a Boy Scout troop here in Westminster. And I knew that we needed a man to lead it. And so I, once again, put my pen to work and wrote a poem, which I had published in the newspaper, in hopes that someone would volunteer to start a Boy Scout troop. Well, I'll let you hear the poem first, and then I'll tell you how it turned out. Stephanie Eckerd will read Boy Scouts.
These are your boys. Please observe them. Pay attention while I introduce them and tell you some things that they can do. A scout must be trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, with a reverent mind. Be prepared is the Boy Scouts' motto. Be kind to the helpless and poor. Be clean in body and spirit. Could you ask of your boys anything more? Share with them your time and your money. Help them to be noble and strong. And you'll find the boys of our city would rather do right than wrong. Give them the chance that they are asking. They are only demanding their right, that you who brought them into being should help them to win a life's flight. They're our town and our country's best assets. For better than silver or gold, they're the men who will take our place when we are decrepit and old. There are more just like them in Carroll, just looking for something to do. All they need is your cooperation, and I want to help them. Don't you?
Thank you, Miss Eckerd. Well, I am apparently a better writer than recruiter. Nobody stepped forward. And those eager boys begged and badgered me to help them form a troop, and so eventually we decided that I should lead it, and I was elected by the town council, even though we knew that a woman couldn't lead a Boy Scout troop. So I simply signed all of the official documents with my initials, and that worked very well for one wonderful year until the scoutmaster forgot, and in correspondence to headquarters wrote Miss before my last name, which was greeted with a response that dismissed the miss. Well, I did argue back. I wrote back to the headquarters that, isn't it a shame to be a woman? We're classed with idiots and lunatics and the insane, and I had somehow remarkably managed to fool them for a year, thinking that I was a man, wise as they were. So, did they think I might be capable of voting? You see, by that time I was beginning to change my views on the question of suffrage. But it was not long before we were embroiled in yet another war. My boys, when the time came, marched off to Europe to fight in the Great War. And I have letters from several of them that wrote back saying to me, "Miss Shellman, you taught me to love my flag, and I have not forgotten." And now, on Decoration Day, the children, when they parade with flowers into the cemetery, lay the flowers on the khaki as well as the blue, as some of the boys that you and I know now sleep beside their fathers in that cemetery. Once again, I thought, what can I do? Once again, as I had done in the war before, I knitted socks and caps, and I prayed and I waited. But then I heard about the poppy campaign, those little red silk poppies on the wire stems that are sold to raise money to care for returning veterans. And I thought, well, that's something I can do. I wrote, "Buy a poppy," as a way to encourage the raising of funds to care for our Union soldiers. And so Katie McDonald will now read for you, "Buy a Poppy."
Buy a poppy. Please, buy a poppy. I'm not asking much. It will only cost you a dime. But that's not very much of your hard-earned cash, and less of your valuable time. You don't have to wear it, though I would be proud to wear it right here on my breast. It speaks for our boys who fought over there, and I don't need to tell you the rest. The 2 awful years are still fresh in your mind, of the heartaches that followed the fight. We read of it all in the papers, my friend, but our boys, they went through it all right. We don't know the half, we never can now, but Old Glory, the story can tell, how they slept in the trenches, shell-shocked and gassed, and the many who died where they fell. Oh, the poppy is red, as the blood they shed, and we wear it so proudly today, and to show the world that our flag is unfurled, and the hearts keep Memorial Day. But why buy a poppy? The money they bring will help some poor cripple to live. He gave all that he had, and you're only asked but $0.1 to give. Then please buy a poppy and wear it with pride, and pin it right over your breast. May each heartbeat tell of the brave boys who fell for the land that we all love the best. Dimes make the dollars, and dollars soon grow, if everyone gives but a dime. It's not asking much of your hard-earned cash and less of your valuable time. But it helps swell the fund we're trying to raise, and our boys who were maimed over there will know and remember and cannot forget by this toque the flowers we wear.
Thank you, Katie. I also became a retail price reporter. The Food and Drug Administration had set up a program by which they could make sure that citizens were not being price gouged during the war. And so I was proud of that service to my country as well. I've always been interested in economics. And I think that's one of the reasons that I was drawn to McKinley when he ran for president. He was strongly in favor of the United States remaining on the gold standard, that every paper dollar should have a dollar's worth of gold behind it in the national treasury. A country shouldn't just print paper money willy-nilly. That makes no sense. And I also liked the fact that McKinley so strongly supported Cuba in its efforts to free itself from the despotism of Spanish rule. And so I took my foray into politics. Again, at this point, I'm embarrassed to say, now this was long before 1917, I'm jumping around a bit, So I have to tell you, I was still an anti-suffrage at the time. I wrote in the paper, I'm not an advocate of women's rights as far as a desire to share the privileges of the ballot is concerned. Woman loses her attractiveness, I said, when she throws off the refinement of her sex and apes mannish airs and seeks notoriety. So I got involved in politics in not a mannish notoriety sort of way. I used my pen because that was so much more ladylike. I wrote the lyrics to 2 campaign songs for Mr. McKinley, Brave Cuba Shall Be Free, and Gold is the Standard to Win. And the Peabody Ensemble will share those 2 with you.
To arms, 'tis freedom calls the loyal, brave and true. Defend the grand old ships of state and guide her safely through. For rocks and shoals and breakers loom up on every side, and the good old ship's in danger as she drifts on down the tide. But her captain's hand is steady, our cause is just and true, and side by side for freedom stand the boys in gray and blue. Huzzah! Huzzah! trumpet funeral knell rung by McKinley's hand. Then rally workmen once again around your leader bold. Protect the nation's sacred name and cast your votes for gold. Gold, gold, gold. Gold is the standard to win, and the box that will hold American gold is made of American tin. Gold, gold, gold. Gold is the standard to win, and the box that will hold American gold is made of American tin.
I confess that one's quite catchy, isn't it? Well, I may have been an anti-suffragist when I wrote that, but it wasn't long before I began rethinking my stance. I began to realize that it didn't make sense that a woman taxpayer couldn't vote for her own representative. Isn't that what we went to war against Britain over? And I began to think that perhaps women who were in leadership roles were not so mannish and garish as I had thought. I was seeing around me more and more often women who were rising to positions of power. I remember seeing ad after ad, cartoon after cartoon of women suffragists, who were ugly and brutish and cruel to their husbands and neglectful of their children. And yet around me, I saw young women, primarily, who were none of those things, who were asking for the vote. And then in 1913, I saw the announcement of the parade that was to take place in Washington, D.C., a grand suffrage parade with thousands of women from all over the country who were to march down Pennsylvania Avenue simply asking for the vote. And they profiled some of the leaders of that movement, and they too were beautiful and accomplished and ladylike and obviously quite intelligent. There were doctors and lawyers among them. And then I read in the newspaper what had happened at that parade. You remember reading about that. Those women, simply marching down the street, were attacked by the men along the way. Punched, tripped, pinched, groped. More than 100 of them sent to the hospital. And all my life I had been told, be ladylike, be a lady. Women are more fragile than men. Women are to be protected by men. With protectors like that. And the police had done absolutely nothing to stop it. And that angered me. That angered me a great deal, and so it was not long after that I heard that the Just Government League had formed here in Maryland. It was to ally itself with the National Women's Party, which was the more vociferous aspect of the women's suffrage movement, and I was all in. I became the first president of the Carroll County chapter of the Just Government League. And I remember thinking also that one of the arguments against suffrage came from the liquor lobby. The liquor lobby, who didn't want women to vote because they were afraid that if we did, we would vote for temperance. So I also joined the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And together we shut down more than 21 saloons here in Carroll County. I recruited some of my boys, my former Boy Scouts, and they brought their friends. And imagine, if you will, more than 300 boys shouting together the words to a poem that I wrote. And I'm going to have another of my young friends come and read that, American Boy to His Father. This is Sage.
American Boy to His Father. Vote dry for my sake, Father. I'm asking the question here. Which do you value the highest, your boy or whiskey and beer? Your harvest will soon be gathered. I really would like to know, if you had it all to do over, what kind of seed would you sow? Would it be the wild oats of revel? Would it be the social glass? Say, what would be the example you'd set for your lad and lass? I am only a little laddie, and you are a man full grown. And your harvest is ready to gather, while mine remains to be sown. How best shall I plant the furrows to reap in the coming years, with seed that will bring you gladness, or seed I shall reap in tears? I would like to be like you, Father, when I am a man full grown, and to vote as you always voted, and to sow as you have sown. But I want to be clean and honest, and I vote a clean ballot too. Will I always be right, dear Father, if I vote the same as you? I know you're a Christian, Father, and so on election day, I'm sure for my sake and sisters, you'll vote to keep liquor away. So please, vote dry for me, Father. The day is drawing near when you will choose by your ballot your boy or whiskey and beer.
And we won. I don't know if my poem had anything to do with it, but I'd like to think so. In 1917, the 18th Amendment passed, which forbade the production, sale, and transportation of liquor in the United States and its territories. And 2 years later, in 1919, the 19th Amendment passed, finally granting us women the right to vote. And in 1920, both were ratified. So 1920 was a banner year for us indeed. 5 years ago now. And I have yet to decide what is my next big project. I'll continue, of course, my work on behalf of veterans, and I'll continue my work on behalf of the poor. But perhaps there is some other form of service for me waiting. I was asked recently to write a song for the Salvation Army. I wrote a hymn for them, which rather sums up my views on service. And the Peabody Ensemble will sing for you my Salvation Army hymn to the tune of Son of My Soul.
Help us, O Lord, tonight, our pledge to take. Help us to keep it right for thy name's sake. Give us the strength we need. Help us to pray. Help us to do thy will day after day.
Christ and the army, oh, help us to be. By your attendance, Lord, faithful to be. Help us, our leaders, arms still to uphold. Help us bring everyone's back to the fold.
Help us thy name to speak, thy cause to plead. Give us, O Lord, we ask the strength we need. Bless us when we have said mitzvah tonight. Keep us throughout the week, help us do right.
As we have made our pledge, trusting in thee, help us for Jesus' sake, faithful to be. Oh, be our guide and strength, Father, we pray.
Help us walk close
I know I'm not the only one in this auditorium this afternoon who has come to a stage in life where we realize there are things that perhaps we never will accomplish, things that we had dreamed of. We've come to a stage, some of us, in which we spend more time looking back than forward. More time thinking of friends and family. More time realizing that life is too short to hold grudges. I look now at Decoration Day and see men who were opponents on the battlefield now talking friendly to one another, all of the anger of the past forgotten, laying with their shaking hands flowers on the graves of both friend and foe, the past forgiven. And I think back so often to the years before this whole war started. I think back to lying in that field with my sister and looking up at the clouds, and thinking of that recently, I wrote Cloud Faces. Fleecy clouds go slowly drifting by, fringed with the blue of the azure sky. Dear faces and forms I seem to see, so sweetly smiling and beckoning me. Loved faces I feel that I ought to know, faces from out of the long ago. I wonder. Yes, I wonder. One is a baby's, unstained by sin, maybe the face of my baby twin. A man's strong face, and then another with saintly grace, perhaps my mother's. Then fading away and gone from view, but oh, so real to me and to you. I wonder. Yes, I wonder. How often we see them, you and I, loved faces as clouds go floating by. It may be fancy, but oh, so real. Their very presence we seem to feel. Dear ones who've passed to the other shore, waiting to greet us when we pass o'er. I wonder. Yes, I wonder. Dear Father, grant that we always see cloud faces dear to you and me. Then when our pilot beckons us, come, smiling, they'll welcome us home, sweet home. If over there on the other shore, cloud faces we love come true once more, I wonder. Yes, I wonder.
And now, as Comrade Mary remembered others, so shall she be remembered.
By the American Legion and Auxiliary who carry on her work.
By the Boy Scouts who she organized, by civic groups unnumbered.
But best of all, by a long processional of children passing through the years bearing flowers.